Today we're going to be bringing you our top 5 animals that are not ball pythons from the NARBC show in Schaumburg of 2024. At number 5 from the Ohio Reptile Company would be this pair of frilled dragons. Frilled dragons are just so awesome. Everyone seems to really love them, and it's because these animals remind people of the Dilophosaurus from Jurassic Park. They have the capability of basically doing this, and it's a way of essentially kind of defending themselves. In the animal kingdom, grandiose displays like this are off-putting. If you're trying to mess with this animal and suddenly it does that, you'll probably think twice unless you want to be eaten like Dennis Nedry was. Now, the actual Dilophosaurus versus the one in the movies, I don't believe they look really anything alike. In fact, the Dilophosauruses really were changed to look like the frilled dragons, as far as I know. Now, they only really do this when they feel threatened, but the other very unique thing that they can do is that they can run on 2 legs, and it's very funny and freaky looking. With that said, obviously when they do this, they're not happy. It's not something that you want them to do, but they are really cool animals, very unique and incredibly popular. I don't know anything about their care, so I can't speak as to whether they'd make a great pet. These two here are sold as a pair. They were surrendered back to them, and they were kept together by the previous owner, and they had bonded. They're a male and female, and that can happen, especially in lizards. And when they're separated from each other, it's detrimental to their health. They will stop eating, they feel stress, and, well, I guess sadness. And when that happens, you gotta keep them together. In general, it probably, for most species, is a better idea to keep them separate, but I'm not gonna pretend to speak about the knowledge of care on these animals when I don't have it myself. I am more or less showing them off because they're very, very cool. At number 4 from Nature's Van Gogh would be one of the coolest panther chameleons I've ever seen. We love panther chameleons here, and it's because they are such awesome subjects for our thumbnails. And how couldn't they be with the colors on this? You will definitely see this on one of our NRBC videos, this particular animal right here. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. This is not an altered image, and there's a screen in front of this. The blues are a navy blue. The greens are just so crisp. This is probably my favorite chameleon I've ever seen because I love blues and greens. They're my favorite colors, and this animal is just absolutely electric. Very much reminds me of an oceany type theme, and they do them so well. Chameleons get a bad rap for being difficult animals to care for, that they die quite often, but not all chameleons are as difficult as others. So while you should definitely not jump into this animal without doing your research, I believe that this is not as difficult as the ones that get the reputation of you sneeze at them and they die. But they are not by any means an easy animal. Definitely very rewarding, especially as a display animal. Not something that you want to mess around with at all times, I would say. They definitely enjoy their solitude. They will show themselves out like this. These animals will tolerate being touched from time to time, but they don't necessarily care for it, and it causes them a lot more stress. Others, of course, can have different personalities and whatnot, but you definitely want to give any reptile, quite frankly, its space from time to time. But with its display beauty and how interactive these animals are without having to touch them, the way they eat, the way they move around, almost like the sloth of the lizard world. Very cool animal, and this one is the most gorgeous one I think I've ever seen in my life, in my opinion anyways, because these are my absolute favorite colors, and I've never seen blues like that on an animal before in my life. At number 3 from Spooky Sweet Spoods would be a first timer for our list as a species, and that would be this absolutely amazing jumping spider. I have held a tarantula before, but I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. More or less I challenged myself to do so. But when I held this one, I saw a world where I had a jumping spider, and that's how sometimes some of these things start. My wife, who hates spiders, held this spider, and she even said, yeah, I could see it. It doesn't hurt that their little enclosures are super customizable and awesome, but this was an interactive, dare I say, intelligent, personality-filled little guy that doesn't sound like the care for these animals is too crazy or off the wall, and they take up very little space, and they eat a mealworm every now and again. Especially as adults, they don't eat much, and they only live 2 to 3 years from my understanding. They're not prone to bite. Of course, you can squish them. That's the big scare there. You do very much have to get them used to this. As they get a little older, they get a little more used to being held as well, and they'll move around a little bit slower. On top of that, look at the color colors on this little guy. Black and white with this nice iridescent green near his mandibles. I'm surprising myself that I'm putting this animal on here, but it really does deserve it. And I might gush about this one a little more passionately than I do about some of the other ones on this list, even though they're higher up, because this is a first time thing for me. A quick shout out to Spooky Sweet Spoons. If you're talking about someone who wants to represent spiders, they were top notch. That's no slouch against anybody else there. They took it to the next level, being out and being willing to show people this animal on a level that you don't see too many people do. They're doing it in a way to give you a hands-on experience, which is the way a lot of people learn. So again, thank you to Spooky Sweet Spoons for opening my eyes to this awesome animal. At number 2, from Keith the Dzialak, would be the Solomon Island prehensile-tailed skinks. And if I said your last name wrong, I apologize. But these animals were just so cool and unique. I don't think I've ever seen these at a show before. Right away, I couldn't put my finger on why I loved this animal so much, other than their interactivity, the way that they move around. These would be incredible display animals. And on top of that, they didn't seem like they'd be very difficult for handling either. Their eyes, though, that's what did it for me. They have this stare that just goes straight into your soul. On top of that, to me, they look like the original Godzilla, the head of it, without all the teeth and anything like that. These are really interactive animals, fun to watch, and there's just something about those eyes that just pierce your soul. I don't know if they're capable of blinking. I think they are. I never saw them blink. But they were just so cool and unique. I've heard of them before, but I don't think I've ever seen them in person. They are moderately sized lizards though. What they're in here is obviously just for display. I would imagine they need a bit of room, being something that climbs and whatnot. Something to consider, I'm sure. But again, I don't know that for sure. I'm just assuming it being a lizard that's moving around that much, that climbs, that's that big, probably gonna need a decent sized enclosure. Before we get to number 1, I wanted to go over 2 honorable mentions that we have here. Number 1 would be this Casper Superconda from Snakeful Grace. If you are into hognoses and you do not know who Snakeful Grace is, you are doing yourself a disservice. Not only do they make incredible animals, but they are incredibly knowledgeable, and they're very willing and eager to teach you all about these awesome personality-filled snakes. But let's talk about the animal really quick. It's appropriately named as being a Casper because it's pretty much white like a ghost. There's only one little bit of pattern, and those are along the head. I really love hognose. I've said it many times, but they were one of the snakes that I originally debated getting into breeding before I ultimately decided to settle on ball pythons. So I'm very happy and glad to have now said that I am raising up my own hognose to breed them. But I certainly would love to consider expanding even more in the future, especially when you look at such cool animals like this one. They actually have this cool little genetic name cheat sheet that can just help you learn what a lot of these combos are. So Casper is not a new morph. It's a combination of caramel and ghost, which ghost is hypo and exanthic. So this is a hypo-exanthic ghost. Another honorable mention would be these pair of chuckwallas. Chuckwallas are from the same exact family as something we may or may not be talking about very, very soon. And they are actually a native species to North America, specifically the Arizona desert. This is my first time being able to interact and mess with one, and they're very, very cool animals. I know I shouldn't say I know nothing about their care, but I don't know anything specifically about chuckwalla's care. I do know a thing or two about the animal I was alluding to, which just so happens to be our number 1 pick. And at number 1, by and large, what has very quickly become my favorite lizard from S&T Uromastyx would be pretty much all of their Uromastyxs. The ornate blues and yellows, these almost tribal, rainforesty type patterns that are coming in on these animals that come from a very, 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 very hot place. Did I say very enough? Because if you're thinking about getting a Uromastyx, you're going to need to provide them with a hot spot of about a minimum of maybe 120 degrees to maybe even a little bit more than that. They are very similar care to bearded dragons. They also pretty much are a completely vegetarian species. I have heard people say that they will feed them bugs occasionally, but this is not a necessity. These colors are so incredible and intense. They look fake, but I guarantee you they are not. I believe what you are looking at here is an ornate and a philobae. I could be saying that incorrectly, so I apologize if so, but what is not incorrect is how awesome and amazing they are. But my favorite one of all of them might be this one here, which I believe is nicknamed a rainbow, but the morph's name is Yamanensis. Again, could be saying that very wrong, but the creamy colors here are outstanding. And when you get into the light, there is a kind of iridescence that gives off on this animal. Just absolutely incredible. And such well-fed, well-bred animals from this breeder, honestly. Look at that chunky belly on this boy. It's absolutely gorgeous. Uromastyxs are highly underrated. If you can keep a bearded dragon, you can very likely keep a Uromastyx. And I'm not trying to stunt the popularity of bearded dragons by any means, but more or less just bring more attention to these awesome animals, because they don't eat bugs like beardies do. These are vegetarians only. Other than that heat requirement, they're very easy to take care of. Their personalities are incredibly similar. The only difference I'd say is that sometimes Euros can be a little bit more flighty before you get them. They like being on the ground for the most part out in the wild and nudging themselves into rock formations and only letting that spiky tail come out. So this is very unappetizing to predators. So if you're holding them, they probably won't want to maybe chill on your shoulder so much as maybe just kind of sit on you, and you might notice that they kind of try to nudge themselves into you in some area because they very much feel safe doing that. But as you hold them and get used to them, they will get more used to you. And how would I know about the care of Uromastyx? Well, that's because I have a couple of them. Oh, hi there. He's not trying to bite or anything like that. He just likes to be on the ground, but of course the camera does not fit, so we'll keep him out for just a little bit. But he is very, very cool. And as you can see, my Uromastyxs here are not as ornate and beautifully patterned as the ones here, but they are very orangey and red. Their bellies, on the other hand, are incredibly patterned. Males typically will have a lot more color than the females, which you can tell, I'm sure, which one is a male and which one is a female. They're incredibly rewarding, exotic, amazing looking animals. And the ones that we saw here at the NARBC show probably take the cake as the most beautiful Uromastyxs I've ever seen. These animals deserve a lot more attention. They are super cool, super unique, interesting, personality-filled little animals, which is why these beautiful Uromastyxs make #1 on our list for animals that are not ball pythons at the NARBC show. Should we do a video on Uromastyxs and their care and whatnot completely? Let me know in the comments, because these are cool animals. If you like this video, you can actually check out our top 5 ball pythons from the NARBC show right here next to Mushu, and you can check out our complete walkthrough of the entire show right here next to Lola.